Good morning. My name is Lori Sussex. I'm with the ECIDA. And much like everybody else in this room, we've been hearing about opportunity zones for quite a while, and we were doing some research and a bunch of webinars, and just trying to see how this might be useful and another tool for economic development in the region. And we were trying to look desperately for somebody who was taking the lead. So our CEO in January convened a meeting with stakeholders to try and find out who was doing what. So it was about 35 stakeholders, community leaders, economic development professionals, and we all just kind of said, okay, here's what it is and who's doing what. And they said, you're doing what. So what we did is created a little working group to kind of figure out what we could work on collaboratively to market to opportunity funds. So we have a working group made up of ECIDA staff, Harris Beach, City of Buffalo, and West Buffalo, Niagara, County of Erie, Town of Amherst, City of Lackawanna, Town of Tonawanda, City of Tonawanda, LISC Buffalo, NFTA, Representative Hagan's office, Buffalo Niagara Partnership, ESD, the World Trade Center, and most recently the Oshai Foundation and National Grid, who have pledged some funds to help us out. So basically, the group was looking at how do we position ourselves to take advantage of the opportunity zone. So that's where what we've been working on since January. So all of our partners at the table stepped up in a big way. The City of Buffalo is creating a prospectus which really highlights the zones, what differentiates the zones, what is unique about them, investor projects within those zones. So we're creating that prospectus. And then we recently put out an RFP to hire a marketing consultant and investment attraction to kind of come in and develop a plan on how we market our zone to investors, both local and national. So that's where we're at right now. So the RFP is out. We're waiting for responses, and we hope we have some competitive responses. But we're going to just keep moving forward, and we'll see what happens. But that's about it.
In preparation for this event, LISC has been trying to at least provide some quick links through to some of the organizations that have been working on opportunity zones. So if you go to the website that we had for this event and scroll down, there's the Buffalo Niagara Partnership site, which has got the map of all the opportunity zones, as well as the ECIDA, ESD, the City of Buffalo, and some other municipalities as well. So we have tried to locate that in a space that's relatively simple. And with that, Supervisor.
Thanks. So our Amherst experience with opportunity zones has been very interesting. I first have to give a lot of credit to Maggie Winship, who is our Director of Strategic Planning and really heads up our Economic Development Office. At the onset of this, when the governor's decisions or placements were due to the Treasury Department, at one point she came running into my office with a sheet of paper. It took about 30 seconds to explain opportunity zones and said, you have to get on the phone and get one of these. So if you wonder how Amherst has an opportunity zone, Amherst has a west side, which is made up of 9 low-mod census tracts. The entire Amherst border with Niagara Falls Boulevard are actually qualified census tracts. And so we said, this is what we need to sort of stimulate some of this changeover from our failing big box retail in those environments and start making places for people, right? So we were fortunate enough to get a call back saying, all right, we're gonna set one of these in Amherst. They gave us the census tract number, we looked it up, and it was literally University of Buffalo's North Campus. We're like, that's not gonna work. So now we have to get them to move a census tract, which, when we were able to get them to shift it to the Boulevard, cover the Boulevard Mall, we were excited. The Boulevard Mall at the time was in in receivership, and we immediately, even without knowing all the pieces of the puzzle here, started to use the opportunity zone designation to really broadcast Boulevard Mall as an investment opportunity out there to the world. That got its receivers handler basically the opportunity to market it, put it up to auction, and the auction really took off because there were a number of groups using opportunity funds, or that we thought they were going to be using opportunity funds that were in the mix. As it turns out, the one that won is not using opportunity funds, but the value crept up because of it. So what we've done basically in a short amount of time is say, all right, how do we take areas of big box retail and failed retail environments and start to translate it into something that can be useful to the town, to the area, to the region. Our opportunity zone sits between North and South Campus. It's where the light rail would basically come in through as a sort of center point on the extension. So our goal was basically to create, sort of a urban environment there, and within this area where we can direct some of the focus on student housing. In order to do that, we've had to recognize that having a product that is an opportunity zone is one thing, and having a product that is shovel-ready in an opportunity zone is another thing. So the town has been working through a draft GEIS and a new zoning to accompany it, creating the zoning districts, rezoning the opportunity zone, and getting the sort of seeker and the GEIS out of the way, understanding what infrastructure improvements we have to make, and being able to assign those infrastructure improvements a dollar value has led us to really have what we think is a very workable product that's ready for consumption, and that's the story we've been trying to tell, working with the ECIDA and the other partners to make sure we push that story forward.
Hi everyone, my name is Richard Rogers. I'm part of a company called Common Owner. We are working with the Batavia Development Corporation to establish an Opportunity Zone Fund and co-manage it. The Batavia Development Corp wanted to take a bit of a more aggressive approach, I would say, as far as starting their own fund to call attention to the city of Batavia. If you're not familiar with it, City of Batavia is a small city about halfway between Rochester and Buffalo. So they have two opportunity zones. One is kind of right in their downtown where they have a mall, and the other one is in a more industrial area. So we came to an agreement with the Batavia Development Corp to establish this fund. The idea being to create a securities offering, an exempt securities offering under Rule 506C, which is getting a little bit into the weeds, but they wanted something that anyone would be able to invest in and that we could really openly market to accredited investors in a way that we haven't typically seen around here. You know, a lot of the action has been kind of developers either have their normal investors who have a fund or they have their own fund set up. So being able to kind of put something out there that people could see was really the goal. That being said, like any real estate project, you know, you have a lot of moving parts, a lot of due diligence, questions about acquisition. So we really have been waiting, going through that process to make sure that we have a viable, feasible project before we go out and set up a fund and initiate an offering and incur those sorts of expenses. So right now we've been going through that due diligence project, lining up, sources, whether it's tax credits, grants, soft money that might be able to help some of the projects that they have on the table be viable, working with property owners and developers to potentially acquire some of these parcels, and go through all of the standard due diligence that you would see. So that's kind of where we're at right now, and we are hopeful that we'll be able to put some stuff together. I don't know if it would happen by year end, but we are investigating opportunities in both of the opportunity zones in Batavia, and hopefully you'll be seeing some more about that in the near future.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Pietra Zaffron. I'm a partner with Harris Beach here in Buffalo. My practice is primarily in the area of tax and economic development. We are general counsel to the ECIDA and as well for the Batavia Development Corporation. So my practice sort of straddles both worlds in the sense that when the Opportunity Zone program rolled out, it was tucked into the Tax Cuts and Job Act, and a lot of people didn't even realize it was there. And when folks realized the extent of the potential for incentivizing development in highly distressed areas, the buzz just exploded. So the reason you're hearing so much about it this year in particular, there's a lot of time frames and deadlines built into the program, and 2019 is a big year. There's a year or a date I call Judgment Day, on December 31st, 2026. All of the capital gains that are going to be invested and deferred in these zones, on that date, if you're still in a fund, even if you've invested in a fund and the project's humming along, you'll have to recognize your gain at that point. So you're deferring it up until that point. So there will need to be liquidity or cash available to pay the taxes. But if you're in that fund before the end of this year, you get 15% of that investment tax-free that you won't have to pay taxes on. If you're not in by the end of this year, the most that you can get tax-free out of your initial investment would be 10%, and that would mean you'd have to be in by 2021. So those are the primary deadlines that are driving the increase in interest that you're seeing this year, is because of that 15% carve-out. But the big carrot in my mind is on the back end. So we talked about 2019 and 2021. If you're in the fund for 10 years and your investment appreciates, what's going to happen is the increase in the value, more or less between your investment and the fair market value after the 10 years that you're in, that comes out tax-free, and that's huge. So that is really the potential upside that investors see in this program that's really unprecedented. And in the economic development world in New York State, our firm happens to work with the majority of the IDAs throughout New York State. So I've been speaking on this topic pretty much up and down the thruway, and I commend Erie County and our constituent stakeholders in the working group, because a lot of other areas are not this far ahead. They're playing catch up now, and I was just actually on the phone yesterday with one of my partners who's working with another city in the state who's looking to start this process, whereas Erie County and our stakeholders are really far into it. So I commend them, and we have a good tool because what we're in competition with here locally is the national playing field, right? The Opportunity Zones is a federal program. They're all over the country. We have 514 in New York, but there's thousands nationally. So if you have an investor that's looking for a good project, it can be anywhere in the United States. So we really need to put on our A game here and attract that outside money. That's the ideal investor that you want to see come into Western New York, right? Is outside money, a new investor to the area. But that's not to say we can't incentivize our local investors into these programs and into these areas. So what I'm seeing in terms of inquiries, a lot of people are kicking the tires. This year was a big year for the rules coming out. So at the end of 2016, 18, excuse me, the first round of regulations came out, and then we had another second round of regulations that came out in April. And there was a public hearing on those regulations because they're all draft. There was a public hearing at the beginning of the year and then again in July. So they'll be finalized in the near future, but what the IRS said is you can rely on those regulations for the most part as they are currently drafted. So what you were seeing is a lot of developers, investors, potential stakeholders were waiting to see what the rules would say because there was a lot of risk associated with putting your money into something where you don't know what the rules are going to be. And the legislative history of the program is that it's really an incentive that's supposed to be impactful in these communities. And there's concern out there that there may be areas where the zones are designated where they're already gentrified, and is it really going to have the social impact that it was supposed to have? And that stems in part because the selection of the zones goes back to the 2010 census. So a lot's happened since 2010 in some of these areas. So that's why there might be in some cases, a perception of a mismatch between where the zone is designated and what the need is. So you have this combination of a social impact with what they say is trillions of dollars sitting in the wings of unrealized capital gains, and how do we marry those two? So that's where our partners here in Western New York are working to create that platform and be the matchmaker, essentially. So I have the good fortune of working with both the public side, but then even this morning on the way here, the referrals I get, let's say you have a fund manager, private banking folks, investment advisors that have access to the capital with their clients. Those are the leads, so to speak. So I had a call just this morning from a fellow who is working with a private bank locally, and he's going to have a significant capital gain. So he doesn't know a lot about the program. He's going to have a lot of questions. But that's the type of kicking the tires I'm talking about. And unless you have the right fit between that investor and a project that's a good project, that's where the magic happens. And it can be as simple as a closely held partnership with one or two people that's targeting a business or a project or a startup business. It can even be a startup situation on a much larger scale, like we're talking about with the mall redevelopment, where it's a national developer and it's a much bigger scale and group of people, and you can partner with non-opportunity zone fund investors. It doesn't have to be solely the capital gains that fund these projects. And something to keep in mind is a lot of it is open, so it doesn't have to be real estate. It can be an operating business. There's some SIN businesses that are excluded, but for the most part, it's wide open. Public-private partnerships are on the table. There's some states that are working in conjunction with their universities and their municipalities to, maybe it's not as sexy of a project, but it's a need, and it's perhaps a safer investment for an investor that's looking for something with a decent rate of return, but that's safer in the long run. So that's the type of variety that you're seeing.
I think that there's been a lot of conversation in Western New York about doing this or getting money from the municipal side. But the development community has been fairly quiet and somewhat private around their interaction with the program. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about what you're hearing from your perspectives around whether or not our local developers are intending to use Opportunity Zone, the program explicitly, and if not, why not? And what kinds of challenges we might be running into from the practical application of this program in Western New York so far.
I don't know how much light I can shed on that. I think a couple of the local developers, namely Nick Sinatra, has been, of course, promoting the program quite readily and looking to partner with investors from outside the area who are taking advantage of opportunity funds. The local development community really hasn't tipped, I think I can say that and say they haven't tipped their hand one way or another on it. So, I mean, we're kind of getting the same standpoint as the town.
So I'm also an attorney in addition to the stuff I mentioned, and I am closing a deal very soon. Can't really talk about it, but that does have a couple of opportunity funds in the capital stack, so it's something that's happening. It just isn't really, there's no real reason for it to be broadcast, right? It's not really any different from a typical partnership, tiered partnership that is. So, you know, there are funds that are being formed, there's projects that are happening using this capital, but it's not really out there in the way that matches kind of some of the hype. And I think just to speak to the issue of gentrification that's come up a couple times, you know, if it's business as usual, if it's the same developers and the same investors, you are going to have people left out of that process. So I think that's something that's really important to look at, is how do we get you know, everyday people into the ownership of these qualified opportunity zone businesses, whether they be real estate projects or active businesses. So I think that there are potential opportunities to do that, but you know, the securities laws make things a bit challenging. But I will be speaking on that later this afternoon, if anyone's around.
Petra, I don't know if you want to add just one or two more comments.
Yeah, I think that the drawback from what I've seen from someone actually utilizing the fund structure in a project is the timing. The investor who has the capital gains has a tight time frame, and then when the fund is funded, it too also has a tight time frame within which to complete the project or to fund the project. So if those timelines don't fit in to where a project's already further along than what this structure will allow it to slow down for, that's where you'll see someone not do it. But if it's something where the stars align and the timing is right, there's ways to make it happen.
We do have just one extra minute, and I wanted to invite, and I probably should just walk the mic over to Marnie Levine, because Launch New York has actually been working on this in the small business space, so she agreed ahead of time, but maybe I'll meet you here, Marnie.
Thanks so much, Julie. This has been a great discussion for people to understand that while this is meant to be simple and anyone can do it, it's anything short of simple, far from. And Pietra, thank you for speaking across the state. When this was created, it was a brainchild of Sean Parker, the founder of Napster. He's an entrepreneur. He thought about operating businesses. We've spent all this time really talking very little about operating businesses because, yes, as George has said, the legislation became tricky. So Launch New York just happened to be in the middle of the market dynamic that is all about democratization of companies who want to be connected with equity capital and investors who want to be connected with those companies. So we were kind of in a perfect spot, and I think what you're hearing is we're already starting to see some of the benefits sunset. So as a community, we've got to get on this. There are investors coming to the table who never would have been thinking about these communities in many cases, and now that we have the regs clarified, we have a better sense of how to position these projects, but someone has to take the lead because it's just too complicated for your average taxpayer. Otherwise, any accredited investor could just do this all by him or herself. So for Launch New York, what has happened is we are a nonprofit, we're a 501c3 that helps high growth potential businesses. We started mentoring, and my co-founder, David Culligan here, we started mentoring back in 2012, and actually for upstate New York, what we found is we've just served our 1,000th client with free mentorship. The press release came out today. So mentorship is key, but guess what? Equity capital paired with that is incredibly powerful. It wasn't our idea. Other states have been doing this. We just jumped on board. Our seed fund started in 2016, and within 2 years became the most active seed fund in New York State, one of the most active in the country. And I want to thank the Wilson Foundation for the support of that fund. We just introduced a new limited partner fund that provides returns. Nice timing for the opportunity zones, right? Timing is everything, and I want to thank the LISC for being a major participant and limited partner in that fund. All of this is happening because the dynamic of opportunity zones and people wanting to invest local is here, it's powerful. Launch found that the majority of our clients, 70% of our companies, naturally are in low-income census tracts. Naturally. We have good news headlines, and Laura, I really appreciate you sharing them, but this is our reality in upstate New York. We cover the whole western half of the state. Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Ithaca, Binghamton are all suffering this. So we are very naturally located in these areas, servicing companies who want to grow and create jobs of the new economy for everyone to share in that wealth. So we became a community development financial institution, and as you heard, it's mostly for debt financing. We are one of only 17 equity financing, venture capital financing CDFIs in the country, and the only one funding companies in New York State. So we're perfectly placed to do this. Have we been studying it? Yes. Alex Killian is the guru, and we participate in phone calls every 2 weeks nationally on this with Economic Innovation Group. The regs just got clarified, we're ready to go. So what did we do? Because guess what? We want to make it easier for any accredited investors to support these companies. So we just created these for-profit funds because, as you heard very aptly, it's expensive to set up funds. But you need deals coming in, you need somebody vetting those deals. You don't want to just throw money at a company in a region because you like the region. So for us, we have a new Invest Local platform that starts with the most active seed fund and nonprofit funding. We're investing in companies 2 to 3 times a month. 40% of our companies are in the designated zones. So what we've just introduced on top of our limited partner fund is an investor network, so it's open for investors to look deal by deal. So we deal with these issues that Pietro has brought up around timing. So creating a fund that you invest over 4 years, you can't do it by the legislation. It just doesn't work. So for us, the new investor network, and we just announced that launched with 100 beta users who are accredited investors. They can look deal by deal, and we're letting them know which of the companies qualify for the tax benefits of the opportunity fund. So essentially, we're doing the work. So what this really means is community members who are willing to stand up, whether it's real estate projects or operating businesses, someone needs to form that project and lead the way. So Launch New York provides that service now through the investor network and lets investors pick and choose as they will. We just fielded our first 6 companies. There's one other little caveat I'll tell you about, and Alex will be on the panel later if you want to do a deep dive. This has to be equity capital. This is hard for folks who are lenders to really wrap their heads around, and why do they care about it, right? So in our world, we do convertible debt notes. So it's debt on the books, but it's meant to convert to equity. And we do that because it's quicker, easier for companies who are still trying to earn their first buck. So right now, our first 6 companies are still doing convertible debt for the investment, so we cannot use the opportunity fund, even though we've had a couple of them would qualify. We're priming them because when they raise their next round, when you talk about high growth companies, they're always raising. So it's a matter of months that they will have opportunity fund eligibility. So we're going to prepare that so any of the investors interested can just use what is a new marketplace featuring your hometown deals. There's nothing like it out there. So finally, we do have a vehicle for this. But just know we're staying on top of the rules, and there is risk associated with it. I won't dive into more of those details, but your community actually has one of the first operating business offerings, if you will. I won't even use that word. Wrong word. Platforms that you can take advantage of. Otherwise, operating businesses are very difficult to jump into without that kind of intermediary. So thanks for letting me share that.
Thank you.